Chicago, 1987. In a 12th-floor apartment of the Grace Abbott Homes, neighbors heard a woman screaming, "They're coming through the walls." 911 operators logged 4 calls from Ruthie McCoy, 52, a retired hospital aide living alone. Officers arrived too late. The door was locked. Her body, discovered 2 days later, lay beside a bathroom torn open behind the mirror. At the time, investigators dismissed her final words as confusion, a symptom of mental illness. Everyone thought it was just another break-in, just another neglected housing case. But the reports kept coming. A maintenance log recorded interior access through medicine cabinet void, and photos show the mirror's anchoring points bent backward. Today, the mirror hangs encased behind museum glass. Decades later, Hollywood would soften this story, turning terror born of isolation and neglect into myth. Inside the glass, you can still see the rust where someone's hand once reached through. Grace Abbott Homes stood under the shadow of the Cabrini-Green Towers, built 1950, already failing by the mid-'80s. Chicago Housing Authority records from 1986 documented systemic disrepair, broken security doors, collapsed ceilings, and hollow wall voids connecting neighboring apartments. What began as maintenance tunnels had evolved into pathways of vulnerability. Ruthie McCoy, born in Pine Bluff, Arkansas, moved to Chicago during the Great Migration. By 1987, she lived alone in apartment 1109 after her daughter relocated to the South Side. Staff at St. Dorothy's Mission remembered her bringing canned goods for neighbors despite her own limited income. Housing inspection files noted her recurring complaints: cabinet moves at night, cold drafts from behind the mirror. Maintenance requests went unanswered. In March 1987, McCoy told social worker Deborah Lisewski, "They come in through the cabinet." Her concerns were documented but dismissed. Case notes retrieved from Department of Human Services archives read, "Client reports feeling unsafe due to voices and noises in bathroom, encouraged to keep radio on for company." The social worker later testified she believed McCoy's concerns stemmed from unmedicated schizophrenia. The building's structural flaws became most evident in maintenance diagrams showing plumbing chases, narrow passages behind bathroom walls where pipes ran between units. These open channels, barely visible on blueprint sections marked tenant separations, would later become central to the investigation. On April 22, 1987, McCoy placed 4 emergency calls between 8:45 p.m. and 9:04 p.m. The dispatch tapes, preserved in Chicago Police Department archives, captured increasing desperation. Dispatch transcript, CPD archive tape number 040B, 8:45 p.m. Operator: "Emergency operator, what's happening?" McCoy: "Someone's trying to break in, 1109 Abbott." Operator: "How are they trying to get in, ma'am?" McCoy: "They're coming through the bathroom. They've thrown the cabinet down." 9:02 p.m. Operator: "Chicago emergency. McCoy, breathing heavily. They're breaking through the walls. Please come, 1109. 2 patrol cars arrived at 9:20 p.m., according to the incident log. Officers Raymond Brooks and Leonard Baldus knocked repeatedly. When no one responded from inside, they requested a key from building management. None was available. Department policy prohibited forced entry without visual confirmation of danger. They left at 9:48 p.m., marking the call as resolved, possible mental health case. Neighbors interviewed by the Chicago Reader reported hearing thudding sounds until nearly midnight. Vernita Hill, who lived in apartment 1110, told reporter Steve Bagheera, "It sounded like pipes knocking. But we all knew nobody had fixed no pipes that late. We heard it, but nobody went to check." By the following evening, residents reported a distinctive copper-tinged odor in the hallway. No maintenance request was filed. On April 24th, maintenance supervisor Earl Jones and security guard Michael Pratt opened Unit 1109 after receiving complaints about the smell. The incident report, filed at 2:37 p.m., documents their discovery in clinical terms. Deceased female tenant found on floor between bed and bathroom, significant blood spatter on west wall, medicine cabinet displaced. Ruthie McCoy lay supine near the bed, shot 4 times in the chest and abdomen. Ballistics later matched the bullets to a .38 caliber revolver. Crime scene photographs sealed until the preliminary hearing showed the apartment in disarray. Most telling was the bathroom. The medicine cabinet hung askew, revealing a rectangular opening into the wall void. Plaster dust covered the sink basin. Partial fingerprints marked the mirror frame, and a distinctive tread pattern from an athletic shoe was visible on the inner drywall. The medical examiner's report noted defensive wounds on McCoy's hands. Time of death was estimated at approximately 10:30 p.m. on April 22nd, nearly an hour after police had departed. An investigator's note in crime scene unit file, re-87-4112, read, "Mirror removed intact. Multiple fingerprint smudges on back surface, stored at E12th evidence room. Two suspects, Edward Turner, 19, and John Swapshire, 22, were arrested 3 weeks later after attempting to sell McCoy's television at a pawn shop. They were charged with first-degree murder, but the case was ultimately dismissed due to insufficient evidence and no eyewitnesses." The mirror, tagged and unclaimed after trial proceedings concluded in 1988, would be transferred to the Chicago History Museum in 2003. After the murder, Chicago Housing Authority maintenance crews sealed adjoining bathroom walls throughout the Grace Abbott homes. Work orders dated May 1987 show requisitions for metal plates to be installed over the wall voids behind medicine cabinets. But these retrofits arrived too late to quell the fear spreading through the building. Residents on the 12th floor corridor began logging noise complaints. Voices in pipes, cold air through bathroom vents, someone whispering behind the wall. In June 1987, tenant Laverne Watson requested an emergency transfer, submitting a handwritten note that read, "My daughter hear that lady calling her name at night. We can't sleep with the bathroom door open no more." Building manager Raymond Phillips dismissed these concerns as psychological contagion in his monthly report. Security logs, however, recorded multiple 911 calls citing screams near 1112 stairwell throughout that summer. Police responded to fewer than half, citing resource limitations. The concrete hallways of Abbott homes amplified sounds, creating acoustic anomalies. Maintenance worker Derek Williams noted in his daily log, "Fixed pipe leak in 1107. Sounds travel weird between units. You can hear people talking 3 apartments away through the wall spaces." By late summer, parents on the 12th floor had developed their own protective rituals. Gloria Jenkins, who lived in 1106 with her 3 children, told a visiting public health nurse, "We don't use the mirror after sundown. We wash up before dark." The nurse included this observation in her community assessment report, attributing it to cultural anxiety response following traumatic event. On September 25, 1987, journalist Steve Boogeyman published "They Came In Through the Bathroom Mirror" in the Chicago Reader. The extensively researched article reconstructed both McCoy's murder and the architectural vulnerabilities that enabled it. Boogeyman's investigation included housing authority blueprints showing how medicine cabinets throughout Cabrini-Green backed into common maintenance chases, open shafts allowing easy movement between apartments. These passageways, designed for plumbing repairs, had become infamous among residents as the holes or the runs. "The plumbing chases are supposed to be sealed between apartments," explained a CHA maintenance supervisor who requested anonymity. But over time, the barriers were removed or deteriorated. You could crawl from one unit to another if you knew how. After the article's publication, local television stations picked up the story. Channel 7 News ran a segment titled "Murder Through the Mirror," featuring interviews with Abbott Homes residents who described similar break-ins. Calls flooded the Chicago Reader's offices. Other public housing residents described intruders reaching through cabinets, missing medicine, or whispered voices from adjoining units. A handwritten letter addressed to Boogeyman, now preserved in the newspaper's archives, reads, "They did the same thing at Rockwell Gardens last year. My cousin had to nail his medicine chest shut every night. For many outside Cabrini-Green, the story merely confirmed negative stereotypes about public housing. For residents, it validated what they had known for years. Their homes had been designed with fatal flaws." The mirror. From apartment 1109, cataloged as Item RM1, sat in a housing authority storage facility for nearly a year following the trial. Custodian Paul Simmons, who managed the evidence room from 1986 to 1992, later recalled unusual occurrences when working late. "The lights would flicker whenever we opened that particular cabinet," he noted in a 2001 interview for the Cabrini-Green Oral History Project. "I'm not superstitious, but I never liked being alone with it." Photographs from Tribune archives dated November 1988 show the mirror still bearing faint fingerprint smudges along its edges. The glass itself, cracked at the lower corner, reflected storage shelving in harsh fluorescent light. Because of continued reports of intruders using the medicine cabinet entry point, CHA Security implemented new protocols. Maintenance records from early 1989 show the installation of floodlights in bathroom conduits throughout several buildings. Work orders specified permanent illumination of plumbing chases to deter unauthorized access. During this period, residents developed their own security measures. A survey conducted by Tenant Council President Dolores Wilson found that 64% of respondents had barricaded their bathroom cabinets with furniture, nails, or duct tape. When renovation crews began removing cabinets for replacement in late 1989, some workers requested daytime-only assignments. One maintenance log entry simply stated, "Hearing running water not connected to any line. Request transfer to exterior work." By 1992, when demolition plans were announced for sections of Cabrini-Green, the mirror was relocated to Central Evidence Storage. Its designation changed to Physical Exhibit Number 412A. Between 1987 and 1991, Chicago Housing Authority incident reports documented 32 similar break-ins via medicine cabinet voids across multiple public housing developments. Police records show only 7 led to arrests, with most cases remaining unsolved. The phenomenon gradually transformed from crime pattern to urban folklore. Residents spoke of the woman in the pipes whose warnings went unheeded. Children passed bathroom mirrors quickly, avoiding their own reflections. The pragmatic fear of intruders merged with supernatural dread. Housing counselor Ava Benson, who worked with families relocated from Abbott homes, kept detailed files of resident experiences. Among her papers, discovered after her retirement in 1998, was a note to a colleague. "If she could call once, maybe she still does, through the vent. These buildings have memory." At Eleanor Roosevelt Homes across town, maintenance worker James Turner told supervisors that residents refused to have broken medicine cabinets replaced. His work log from March 1990 reads, "Apt 304 rejected new cabinet installation. Tenant sealed wall opening with concrete. Says, safer this way." Whether understood as metaphor or memory, the phrase, "they come through the walls," entered Chicago's oral mythology. Social worker Claudia Moore documented this transformation in her case notes. Families discuss the mirror lady as shorthand for systemic neglect. The ghost story carries the truth no one would believe. By 1991, the legend had spread beyond public housing. Security companies reported increased installations of bathroom motion sensors in private apartments throughout Chicago's south and west sides. News features in Chicago's neighborhood papers quoted mothers telling children to shut the bathroom light before bed, so her face won't show in the glass. The Southside Weekly ran a series on urban legends in February 1990, noting the prevalence of mirror-related fears across different communities. Church leaders addressed the phenomenon through their own lens. Reverend Thomas Mason of St. Mary's Baptist Church held prayer vigils for victims of housing neglect. His sermon manuscripts, archived in the church library, mention souls restless in the mirrors, calling for justice denied in life. Professional skeptics attributed the spread of mirror folklore to faulty plumbing acoustics and the power of suggestion. Northwestern University psychology professor Dr. Ellen Markson published a paper titled "Contagious Belief: The Mirror Phenomena in Chicago Public Housing," arguing that legitimate security concerns had evolved into shared mythology. Yet the symbolism persisted. Academic researchers traced the story into early 90s African American folklore anthologies as the Mirror Woman, or Ruthie's Warning. Dr. James Henderson of the University of Chicago interviewed 50 former Cabrini-Green residents for his dissertation on community trauma narratives. His subjects consistently mentioned mirrors as symbols of institutional betrayal. Architectural critic Michael Thompson wrote in Metropolis magazine, The medicine cabinet void represents everything wrong with public housing design. Function prioritized over safety, maintenance pathways that became predatory highways. When the last building of Grace Abbott Homes was razed in 2007, demolition contractor reports noted finding a mirror wedged behind two drywall panels in a 12th floor bathroom, wrapped in faded police tape labeled "Return to Evidence." In 1985, 2 years before McCoy's death, British novelist Clive Barker wrote The Forbidden, a short story set in a dilapidated Liverpool housing estate. The tale featured a vengeful spirit summoned through belief and desperation. After 1987, American media coverage of the Cabrini-Green murder reached Barker during his collaboration with screenwriter Bernard Rose. Production memos from TriStar Pictures, dated 1991, confirmed that Rose relocated the story to Chicago after reading Bogira's Chicago Reader article. Rose obtained permission to scout Cabrini-Green, though filming there proved impossible due to security concerns. The medicine cabinet entry point from McCoy's case became the literal portal for the film's supernatural antagonist. Rose later told Fangoria magazine, issue 119, 1992. It was the idea that horror hides in social neglect. Cabrini felt like today's Gothic ruin. The real tragedy there wasn't supernatural, it was how society abandoned these communities. TriStar's legal department carefully fictionalized the narrative, removing direct references to McCoy while retaining the mirror entry point. Internal studio correspondence shows concern over potential lawsuits from McCoy's family or the Chicago Housing Authority. Production designer Jane Ann Stewart recalled visiting the Chicago Historical Society to research public housing architecture. They had photographs of the actual medicine cabinets. Seeing how flimsy they were, how they connected to these open channels between apartments, it was more disturbing than anything we could invent. The film entered production in late 1991, transforming a housing failure into supernatural horror while the real buildings still stood. The 1992 film Candyman transformed the real victim into myth, a vengeful spirit tied to race and legend. Where McCoy's story spoke of poverty and ignored fear, cinema offered supernatural vengeance wrapped in romance and tragedy. The mirror became a portal not to an adjacent apartment, but to another realm entirely. Critics in the Chicago Tribune noted the irony. Residents still lived steps from where the original murder happened. Arts reporter Monica Johnson wrote, "While audiences shudder at fiction, families in Cabrini-Green still barricade their bathrooms against very real threats." A behind-the-scenes diary from Angela Rhodes, who worked as an extra during filming, describes community tension. "We filmed the stairwell scene near Cabrini, and someone upstairs played the police tapes on repeat. The crew didn't know what it was, the locals did." The film crew never entered Cabrini-Green's interior for principal photography. Instead, production designers recreated the distinctive graffiti and corridor layouts on sound stages. Rhodes noted, "The set looked cleaner than the real thing. Horror needs shadows, reality needs maintenance." When Candyman premiered in October 1992, community organizations from Cabrini-Green protested outside Chicago theaters. Their signs read, "Our tragedies are not entertainment," and "Fix the real horrors." The Chicago Defender published interviews with residents who expressed frustration at having their lived experience commodified while conditions remained unchanged. The legend had returned home disguised as entertainment, yet the mirror entry points in remaining CHA buildings had still not been permanently secured. In the early 2000s, researchers at the University of Illinois compiled the Cabrini-Green Oral History Project, interviewing former and current tenants about life in the housing complex. Project archives contain hundreds of hours of recorded testimony, including multiple accounts of the mirror legend and its real-world origins. Many participants objected to outsiders, capitalizing on their suffering. Loretta Wilson, who lived in Abbott Homes from 1975 to 1998, told interviewers, "People made movies, wrote books, took pictures of our pain, never fixed a thing." Her testimony describes barricading her bathroom cabinet with a bookshelf each night until the day she moved out. Others acknowledged that the film finally forced public attention toward housing conditions. Tenant Council member Robert Davis stated, "Nobody listened when we filed complaints. Then Hollywood makes a ghost story and suddenly everyone's talking about the walls." Archivist Dr. Lena Parks, who cataloged the project's materials, summarized the findings in her 2003 report. The horror wasn't ghosts. It was how belief filled the silence left by bureaucracy. Residents didn't need supernatural explanations. They needed secure doors, responsive management, and basic safety. That same year, Chicago History Museum curator Janine Morales secured McCoy's mirror for the exhibition Urban Legends, Architecture of Fear, 2003. Acquisition records show the mirror was transferred from police evidence storage, where it had remained since the trial. Museum guidelines specifically prohibited flash photography of the exhibit. Internal reports note that motion sensors installed near the display triggered after hours on multiple occasions, which technicians attributed to HVAC vibrations. In the museum's climate-controlled basement storage, the mirror, still labeled RM1, Exhibit B, stands behind double glass. The outer pane serves as protection. The inner layer prevents contact with the original surface. Conservation staff maintain detailed logs of the artifact's condition. Cleaning records from 2009 to 2015 mention unexplained smudges forming overnight on the protective glass. Security footage from January 2009 at 2:18 a.m. shows an unusual light distortion moving across the pane. Technical staff concluded it was a camera artifact, possible humidity condensation. Museum docent Elaine Harris, who conducted tours of the Urban Legends exhibit from 2010 to 2017, shared her observations in a staff interview. "When school groups come, the temperature drops noticeably near it. Kids always whisper the name anyway, despite our request not to." Visitor comment cards from the period include complaints of dizziness and ear pressure in the mirror's vicinity. No confirmed injuries were recorded, but insurance requirements led management to institute staff rotation every 6 months for those working in that gallery. Conservation specialist Dr. Mark Reeves noted in his 2016 condition report, "Original glass edge shows continued deterioration at lower right corner where it was originally damaged. Metal frame exhibits consistent 1.2 degree temperature differential from surrounding artifacts. Recommend continued monitoring." Behind its institutional protection, the mirror maintains a dual existence as historical artifact and persistent symbol. Museum records show it. Remains one of the most photographed objects in the collection, despite lighting designed to discourage clear images. In 2021, ahead of the Candyman remake, renewed attention drove record attendance at the Mirror exhibit. The museum displayed a contextual installation, press clippings, McCoy's service photo from St. Dorothy's Mission Archives, and the original movie poster in adjacent cases. Visitors left unauthorized offerings at the base of the display, handwritten notes reading, "Sorry, Ruthie," and "You were right." Security staff collected these daily, preserving them as part of the artifact's ongoing documentation. During filming of a History Channel documentary segment that February, audio engineers captured an unexplained acoustic anomaly coinciding with the narrator's line, "She tried to warn them." Technical investigation found no mechanical source for the distinct knocking sound. Sound designer Maria Cortez noted in production logs, isolated the anomaly, 3 distinct taps at 58.4 Hz and matches typical water hammer in old plumbing. The museum's educational materials were carefully revised that year to emphasize systemic housing issues over sensationalism. Director of Collections Thomas Riley explained in an internal memo, "Our responsibility is to the historical record. We present the evidence, visitors bring their interpretations." Curator's log, October 14, 2021, written by Dr. Janine Morales. "After closing rounds, I turned off the exhibition light. The reflection in the glass remained visible a moment longer than it should have. Engineering says it's phosphorescent residue from the cleaning solution." The official explanation was documented, filed, and accepted. The exhibit continues to draw visitors who stand silently before the glass, some touching the protective barrier with a single fingertip. The recording ends with the investigator closing the museum notebook. The camera lingers on the display case, where McCoy's mirror sits behind its protective barrier. Rather than taking a photograph, the documentarian traces the glass with one fingertip, acknowledging the woman behind it. The voiceover lowers. It was meant to be just an exhibit, but some stories refuse to stay behind glass. Visitor logs from November 2025 show sustained interest in the artifact. Conservation staff note the continued appearance of condensation on the inner surface despite constant temperature and humidity controls. Technical reports attribute this to micro-variations in the building envelope. The mirror remains cataloged, preserved, and contained, a documented reminder of institutional failure transformed into urban mythology. Its power lies not in supernatural properties, but in the very human fear it represents. That our calls for help may go unanswered, that the walls meant to protect might instead become pathways for harm. Audio fades with a hallway hum and distant city siren, the same frequency captured in the 1987 tape when Ruthie McCoy called for help that would arrive too late. Security cameras continue their silent vigil over the exhibit. The motion sensors still trigger occasionally after closing hours. The maintenance logs still attribute this to system error.